Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome, everybody, to the American Made and Paid Show. Thank you so much for being with us here today. My name is Zach King. I'm here with my co-host, Professor Dreg. And for those of you who have not been tuning in to the show, please be sure to check out the first 10 episodes that have already been uploaded. It's crazy that we're already 10 episodes in as of the recording of this. It really goes into what we have talked about in a lot of thorough detail regarding conservative values, the true history and nature of progressive policies in this country. And today we're going to dive back and talk a little bit more about politics, specifically a question that has aroused because everybody, depending on who you talk to, is going to have a different definition of the government. Now, it is something that is run by the people in our country, but we're going to deconstruct that a little bit. The basis for this came from a question that arose in an interview that I had with a so-called progressive. Her name's Kim Iverson. Be sure to check her out, you guys. She's pretty cool. She's a cool person, but our beliefs are not always aligned, and that's okay.
And she's very pretty.
She's a very, very attractive woman. No, I do like her. I like Kim Iverson. She was a very, and we can be open on this show. She was a very, very thorough and good guest to have. I like that we could have discourse in a very appropriate way. I think that honestly, man, that was the one thing that people took away, was just like, oh my gosh, you can actually talk to this person. But the funny thing is, and I'm just going to say this as a last thing, I feel like she has more in common with libertarians than traditional progressives. She has defined progressivism for herself, and that's her right to do that. And I like that we can agree, disagree, and also discuss a lot of things that go on in our country right now, especially with corruption and all that. But yeah, the one thing that came up in that conversation, for those of you who haven't checked it out yet, be sure to check it out on my YouTube channel, was the question of what is government? Because that is something that I'm still defining. And honestly, I don't think people, depending on where you lie on the political spectrum, have a real concrete definition of. It's just, hey, the thing that governs the people, that, enforces the laws. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Professor Dreg?
Yeah. Well, okay. So the one thing I noticed was that she has an idea, and I really don't want to talk too much about your guys' interview because she's not here to defend herself or,
well, we don't have to, but this is where the basis of the inspiration is coming from, is government. Let's talk about government. So
she basically said, who's the government? And basically, from what I heard, no one really knows who is the government. So in the old days, like during our founding, who was the government then? See, now, remember when we spoke about this, that our guys, the guys who founded our father, were criminals. They were criminals in another country. They were. Right. But you got to remember, when you look at it from a lens like that, well, they're criminals, blah, blah, blah. Okay. No, but that wasn't true. They were true alpha males who were fighting a government that we see today in 2019 that was comprised of a bunch of betas.
So an oligarchy.
Megas. Seriously, that's how low. I mean, because we don't know how the king was back then. He could have been an omega for all we know.
Well, King George III was who he was, but let's talk about the institution of that, because we discussed this in our first episode, and it was an oligarchy or a monarchy that they were fighting against, which arguably our government has somewhat slided back into as of today.
Okay, so now let's go back. Alpha males. Back then, our founding were founded by a bunch of alpha males who constructed the Constitution. And that Constitution literally was made for the little guy. So that way, the little guy was never going to get stomped on by the majority. Because, when you have a bunch of alphas running the system, well, of course, you're going to leave the little guy out. But the nature of an alpha, and you got to always remember this, because people always think, oh, the alpha male is the biggest, baddest dude.
And the one who tells everyone what to do is in control, and that's not how the Constitution was written.
Well, no. An alpha, a true alpha, looks out for their pack. So the alpha's job is to protect the weakest guy of the pack, because what's the purpose of an alpha if you cannot protect your entire pack?
Wait, real quick. You just blew my mind, because Darwin's survival of the fittest goes against that.
Yeah, it's all BS. I'm telling you now.
Whoa, that was a revelation for me.
He really is, because see, now I don't say Darwin is a fraud just because I'm black. because Darwin's theories are all targeted against black people and then eventually Asian people, and it's the surviving of or the protection of the white Aryan race, and that's not why I'm against Darwin.
But go back to the founding fathers, because I just had a little episphany there when you said the alpha has that pack mentality where he looks out for the little guy.
Watch any nature show. Dude, watch any nature show, and you will see the alpha male always protecting everybody. He's not going out protecting the betas, because the betas are supposed to be strong enough to fight in a real battle.
So am I to understand that in the animal kingdom and in ecosystems, if we want to take it in that direction, that this type of mentality that is now written as far as the values are concerned in the Constitution is the preservation of natural law in itself, but it's also indicative in our environment everywhere we look. The strongest look out for the hurt ones and the weakest. And it's not a selfish mentality, but why has man conflated that and think that now our definition, okay, let's talk about alpha for a second, that our definition of alpha is someone who doesn't care, is out for himself, but everybody has a skewed definition as to what an alpha male is. It's just, people are like, oh, the guy who gets women. Well, not really. If he has a dependence on women, he's not really an alpha, right? So there's a thing that
has to look out. Look, seriously, everybody needs to know the alpha always has to look out for the weakest people. They always do, because that's their job, or else they won't be alphas. Alphas are real leaders. A leader has to look out for the weakest people
and develop them, right?
Yeah. So if you look at, and the Constitution, remember, says that. It literally says things like that. You have to look out for the littlest guy. But going back to what you point, the laws of nature, that is too in the Declaration of Independence, the laws
unalienable rights.
Nature, it's the unalienable rights.
And there's a passage in there where it's like, when the rights of the people, whether it's the little guy, have the right and the opportunity to defend themselves against tyranny and despotism, right? So it's and it's amazing, because the Declaration of Independence was written 10 years before the Constitution, and it was already an act of war. It was just like, this is what we believe in as conservatives, that the king does not have the right to dictate who goes free and who is in bondage.
It goes against the laws of nature. And the laws of nature.
I never thought of it. Dude, that's amazing. I hope people who are listening to this are following you along, because as you talk, I'm also connecting the dots in my head. And the Declaration of Independence in itself is interesting, because the whole aspect of all men are created equal, you are given certain unalienable rights, is mentioned there a decade before it's written into law, into our government.
Yeah. So that's who the government is. The government is literally that sheet of paper that is supposed to protect liberty and individual rights, including the person who doesn't want to go along. What HOAs are, right? Homeowners associations.
Dude, I hate them.
Yeah. See, that goes against our Constitution, because what if you're that one person who doesn't live there? Who lives there, doesn't want to be a part of it. But we'll get into that.
That's fascism. That's another one of those fascist things that have been put into place.
Well, we're jumping forward, so
let's stay on track, because there's a lot here. There's a lot here.
Because this is our country. Our country is the Constitution. That's our government, and we're supposed to govern that way. So now we look at 2019. Who is the government now? Well, the government is a bunch of people who are not alphas, and they're just looking out for themselves and how to get power, how to control power, and how to become the powerful. Because in this country, you don't need to be a monarch.
Yeah, but can I present a counter argument? This is where a so-called progressive may say, well, here's the thing. We're advocating for policies that are going to look out for the well-being of all people. and we are operating based off of a collectivist mindset.
Yes, and this is the thing. All people don't need protection. See, that's the middle class. They don't need help. They don't need protection. It's the weakest in our society that is always going to get trampled on. Because to this day, who are the weakest in our society? The mentally retarded.
The elderly and the elderly mentally ill and the sick.
The weakest in our society, because everybody wants to group the elderly, but elderly, come on. Who's the elderly in this country? The most powerful in this country. Like Dianne Feinstein. She's
85 years old. She's elderly.
Oh, she is elderly. Donald Trump. He is elderly. He's an elder man. He is a senior citizen.
It's crazy. I forget that Donald Trump is a senior citizen.
Yeah, he's 70-something. He's 77. You know what I mean?
Oh, no. But he's over 70, which classifies you as such.
Yeah, no, but look, he can die at any minute. Seriously, like, Trump, how old is Donald Trump? Oh, okay, he's 72. He's pretty young. I mean,
he's a young elder.
Yeah, he's a young elderly person. But who else is old? How old is Nancy
Ginsburg? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Bernie Sanders.
Ruth Bader, RBG. How old is she?
Oh,
RBG.
Hey, did you see that movie with her in it?
No.
Okay.
Oh, she's 86. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is 86 years old, and I guarantee you she might be dead right now.
Yeah, that's the speculation, because it's like, where is she? Where is she for all these hearings, for these judiciary hearings?
Even baby counsel laughed at that one. She giggled. But anyway, so no, but that's why the whole thing about the elderly, they don't need protection. They really don't, because they have money. They retired. They're sitting on their retirement money. They're okay.
And they got Social Security, which actually benefits the elderly more than it would benefit anybody later.
Yeah. So in the future, blah, blah, they've created a pyramid scheme and
yeah, I know. We can dive into Social Security can be an episode in itself, but let's stay on track about the government.
Yeah. So we have to be very careful when we say who are the weakest. See, like our own prejudices makes us believe that, the elderly need protection. But they don't. They're just older. You know what I mean? And that's
older doesn't necessarily constitute incompetence, because look at Donald Trump. Does he need protection? And does Dianne Feinstein or Nancy Pelosi need protection at 80 years old? No, they don't.
And think about
you have money to hire people to get stuff for you. What's that?
Bernie Sanders. How old is he?
Like 80, I think.
Close to it. He's like 77, 78, 79. Like he's close to 80, but I believe he's like 77. But that's still old. You know what I mean? It's like, come on now.
So I've been saying that. I've been saying the government needs to take care of the elderly. Now you've changed my perspective on that, because not all elderly people need to be protected. And sometimes to even group all elderly people as being incompetent is a problem in itself, because clearly Donald Trump don't need help.
No, but think about this. Who's the youngest person in Congress? AOC. And she's Democrat. And Pelosi's not the oldest, but she's the leader, and she's 79, and she rules over AOC. AOC can't do anything. She is incompetent. She's ineffective because Pelosi tells her what to do. Seriously. Even though AOC is getting all the media attention, so we got to make this really clear. The elderly is not a protected class. And if they are, that's wrong. Because just because you're old doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. The old people are controlling this country.
That's right. Okay, so no, you're right. I've always kind of thought of it badly, because my perspective of elderly are people who can't help themselves. And that's not true. That's only for some elderly people. My grandparents are 90 years old. You best believe they are on a nest egg. They're okay. They're okay.
They're all right.
All right. They're just old, but they're all right. Yeah.
Okay, so now we got to remember, we have to really define who are the weakest in this society. In our society, it's the mental retarded. It really is. It's the mentally retarded. Why? Because they're retarded. It's in the word. It's self-evident. You know, because in the Constitution, it was self-evident that the laws of nature should be how we govern ourselves.
Right.
And it should be self-evident if somebody is retarded that they need looking after, because you look after for these people.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean like you treat them like a baby, these guys. Because hell, man, there was some retarded guys that were really good sergeant at arms because they got retarded strength. And man, those guys can take some hits. You know what I?
But see, this is interesting because the way I talk to you about our government and conservatism, I'm also learning, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this are also starting to realize that we as a people have been thinking in terms of collectivism for so many years that it's hard for us to really go, who really needs protection here? See, because up until this point, I was like, elderly people, I'm like, do they? And now you just kind of made me go, huh, that's not the case. So I'm going to say that. Like, before this conversation, I would have said the government should also be in place to take care of old people. But this country is run by old people, and old people are not a protected class, and they don't necessarily need protection. Now, here's the thing. If you're old and you happen to be mentally ill, then that's different, right? Yeah, to varying degrees. But you're right. It's about identifying who are the weakest, not the weakest, but who needs that protection from people who will trample them, have them taken advantage of.
We don't call them what they are, the weakest. Then
because of political correctness, and people think, oh, that's an ableist thing to say because you're heteronormative and you're
see, I don't even know what that means, but I don't like it.
No, it's all see, here's the thing, man. I came up in the ranks in the liberal progressive schools, and those are the terms that they have. Your term is actually the most accurate, even though it's hard for me to say the word retarded, because for so many years people were like, just don't say the word retarded. But
they call it developmentally disabled.
Okay, developmental people with developmental disabilities.
Even that's BS. I like to say retarded because it's what they are. They're like, if you look up retarded in the dictionary,
yeah,
it's a good definition.
But no, and I want to express my history here because this is part of the discourse that we have is the fact that I am a young, conservative who came up through the ranks in schools, and that's just what we're taught, and that's what a lot of people may also think. But the thing is, when you say it like that, it automatically actually points to a very specific group of people who we deem people who need help. Whereas people with developmental disabilities, what does that mean? Because technically somebody with Asperger's who could actually still be very, very high functioning, have a regular job, would not fall under that line. You see what I mean? Because technically, like, if you're high functioning, if you have autism and you're high functioning, like, you'll be fine.
Mild retardation.
Yeah, mild retardation, whereas, like, okay, maybe the only thing this individual needs is just some social skills development. Really.
Yeah, well, see, but those are the guys that make really good sergeant at arms because they're big. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them are big and they're super strong and they could take a pounding, but then they're kind-hearted, so they're not going to kill a guy. That's why
that's such an interesting perspective. That unfortunately, because of where we're brought up and also due to what we're exposed to, it's like I don't know that. But you're actually pointing this out from your experience that just because they're this doesn't mean they're pathetic. Doesn't mean they don't have a place in society, but the government should be there to be put into place to make sure that they're getting adequate help, that they're secure, that they're not being taken advantage of is really the key here. Not that they can't fend for themselves, but not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, well, because, technically, I think I told you that, but I grew up and we had an alpha. And he was Rem's oldest brother. And
yeah, I think you told the story.
Huh?
What's that?
I learned a lot from that guy because I saw what he was doing. I saw how he organized the neighborhood and and sectioned off everything. And I bet you money to this day he still doesn't know what he was doing. But it's just natural.
But it was innate. It was his character trait, right?
Yeah.
So, well, let's go back to the history of the government and then talk about how it's transformed. Because our country's only 250 years old.
So let's go back to what you just said. 2019, and then you said that you believe the elderly would be a protected class, and that's the whole thing. Progressives always
made us think.
Progressives always knew in order to get power, you have to use people's fear and insecurities in order for them to trade that in for their power, because they're going to tell you, hey, look,
the old people need protecting.
Well, I will help you out. I'll play on your fears, and we'll make policies to stop it. But you can't do it. Think about this. In the old days, the government used the fears that Chinese men were going to take advantage of white women in order to get opium illegal. That's why opium's illegal to this day, because of the fear of Chinese screwing white women.
I never thought of it that way, but that's true.
Love white women so much. But then blacks also went to...
Wait. I got to stop you right there because I have to get this off my chest. Does that mean there is a stigma against Asian men with white women? Do you think it could stem from the fact that because of opiates?
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Because think about the same thing was happening with blacks in the West and the East Coast. In the East Coast, there was a cocaine problem. And in order to make cocaine illegal, they used the fear of the Negro, like cocaine.
Peddling crack and cocaine.
Yeah. Well, no. It was cocaine used to be inside Coca-Cola. So in the old days. So at the same time when they were trying to make opium illegal because it's just a thing. The Chinese brought opiates from China, and they were growing it here in California. That's why the golden poppy, which is a very strong opiate, that is actually a Chinese plant.
Yeah, those came from the Far East. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also what served as the basis for a lot of wars between the Middle East and China back in the day.
With the opiates.
Opium wars. Yeah, dude, that's a real thing.
So what did the white people do to make it illegal? A natural growing plant. Well, oh my God, Chinese men are going to bone down our white women. So they made it illegal. The same thing happened with blacks in the East Coast. So Coca-Cola is actually from Atlanta, Georgia. Right. I don't know if you knew that, but it's
no. I mean, I knew that because the Coca-Cola factory is out there.
Yeah. So it's in the East Coast somewhere.
Nice.
But they used to use real cocaine in Coca-Cola. So you could drink Coke and get cocaine high, when you drank a soda pop.
Yeah.
And it became illegal because why? The government played on the fear that black guys were boning down, raping white women. It's just how it works. So, and that's how, but that's the thing.
Holy cow.
The government of today, which is very progressive, because progressive doesn't mean anything other than racist. I am racist, so therefore I am progressive. Every policy they invent is based on racism, and those stereotypes lead to fear and insecurities. And that's how policies are done. Think about this. You said this a little bit earlier. You thought the elderly were a protected class. Well, according to progressives, blacks are a protected class. And all of these people are protected classes. Why? Because they are the weakest in our society. So blacks are the weakest in our society. Why? Because Darwin says they're like gorillas. So who else is a protected class in today's world? Well,
trans people.
Well, not just trans, but certain types of Asians. Or, so like when you look at all that stuff, and we'll get into that. We will get into why are gay people, protected and all this other stuff, because it goes into the whole suicidal thought that we were talking about the other day. Because remember, I was blown away by that.
No, and that's I was going to tie it back to that, because here's the thing. Something that you said in the last few episodes, for those of you who've been tuning in, was we were talking about enslavement through debt. And one thing I actually wanted to bring up in a future episode, if not this was touch on, was that the national deficit spending of U.S. presidents, progressive presidents, right? Therefore, a bigger debt to creditors, but also people carry more debt. And debt is a form of enslavement, which leads to suicidal behavior. But all of these protected classes have social services that pander to them that cost an obscene amount of money, but they don't really help these people.
Yeah.
And they are
a part of that class.
Yeah. And then you're in bondage with the government.
Well, and I should also,
they take. So what I'm trying to get at is that they take away your freedoms and your liberties.
And people will always say, like the left will always say, well, what about Ronald Reagan? The deficit was huge. It's like, yeah, but he had a very progressive, and I mean extremely progressive Congress, both in the House and Senate.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
and that's why he was against it, but he had to do it, and he regrets a lot of the stuff he did with immigration. He does. You know, like with that whole, what he did, like he did something very similar. He just granted amnesty to all these illegals, and he regretted it. But he had to do it. Why? Because Congress told him to. You know, he's not a king.
But see, here's the thing. You're not a king. Therefore, the president does not have absolute power like King George III over in the UK would have, right? So
but
they
who
set
does
up
have absolute power? Who has absolute power? The government itself. The entire government.
The entire government does. However, not one individual. The way it's set up is that, you know, like we've seen this time and time again, is that with different political parties, forms of leadership, filibustering. That's why nothing really gets done, is because there are different agendas at work.
Well, you got to remember too, because I could hear this, like somebody go, "Oh, you can sue the government." Yeah, but it's extremely hard and it's extremely costly.
Yeah,
you know, so I wanted to say that because I know you can sue. I know you can sue the government.
Yeah,
but it's extremely hard, and a lot of times, a lot of these people have immunity, and you can never depose these people because they have immunity, and to get them to be deposed, you got to have a lot of good reasons. So, and there, you know, and that's why, like, this is another tangent, but like, I knew Trump was never going to be deposed because he's the president. You can't depose the president, and because he has not absolute power, but he does have immunities, and even though there's checks and balances, you know, and they're really trying hard, but yeah, the whole thing was a sham. But anyway, let's get back into track. Let's get back on track. About today's government. Today's government is literally ran by, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, but they're all a bunch of people who fell into the progressive traps as like, hey, look, what's the biggest problem? Who is the biggest protected class? Black people. And as long as people believe that blacks need to be a protected class, we're never going to get anywhere as a country. Because it's not true. The whole notion of having protected classes is false, unless you're retarded or mentally ill. And what I mean, and that's the other thing too. So the medical profession is now saying everything's a mental illness. In the old days, it was like being a manic depressive.
Right.
Like that's a real thing. But now you can be bipolar, and who knows what the hell that is? There's like, you know, 50 different levels of being bipolar, and it's all a mental illness. So therefore, nothing is a mental illness because everybody has it. So you know what I mean? So it makes things very difficult. But anyway, so progressives have made this entire thing with protective classes. And because we have so many protected classes, people who are going to do bad, well, they're going to do it, such as monopolies. See, because there is a role that our government plays to protect the weak, but also to prevent monopolies from ever forming. Because that's wrong. When you become a monopoly, you're like a big giant.
Well, that is Darwinism.
What is?
Monopolies.
Well, but the thing is, it's not natural. I mean, of course it happens because, you know.
Yeah, well, in nature, that does happen from time to time where stronger will prey on the weak. But how does that pertain to our government and preventing monopolies? That's somebody from the other side of the pond would probably argue against.
Well, see, because we can't have monopolies. Because monopolies will...
But don't we have them every day? So how does that work?
Of course we got monopolies now, and I'll tell you how it works because you guys did bring up something very interesting about what was like the government role and like what's happening in a place like I forgot where Kim says she lives, but
Venice, California.
Oh yeah, Venice. How can I forget? So like because I have a lot of history in Venice.
Yeah, I know. That's your neighborhood, man. That's LA.
Venice,
that's
hella cool.
Huh?
Venice is a hella cool place. It really is.
Oh, yeah, Venice Beach, Santa Monica. I mean, that's where everyone goes.
Yeah, no, but like nobody realizes like how much history Venice has and how important it played a role in the Bay Area. It's amazing. Wait, hold on a sec.
For those of you who haven't checked out the interview with Kim Iverson, please be sure to watch that. We did dive into this a little bit further, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so check this out. So she was talking about how Snapchat and and this is very important to understand the role of the government and how governments themselves have no idea how to do this. So, but players like the guys from Snapchat who have the same CEOs, like Google, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Yahoo, their board of directors, their league of extraordinary, people. It's the same people. They jump from one company to the next company, and they all have a say in how these companies run. So they go into small towns with ineffective governments who have no idea, and they usually pick on the progressive cities because they understand, just like with Muslims. See, Muslims and monopolies know how to take advantage of progressive cities because, they have no clue on what the Constitution is.
I can also answer the Muslim part real quick before you continue.
Yeah.
You know why that is?
I have no idea why.
Because there's no God in progressive cities. If you you don't think you don't in the Bible Belt in the United States, right? You know how important the consumption and the participation of church is in everyone's weekly lives?
Yeah, see, that's my weakness. I don't know. That's
that's why you'll find them predominantly in progressive cities because no one cares what you believe in. Whereas you go out to a small town in like Arkansas, they're proud of that. They literally have you would never really see a glamorized Jesus saves billboard in California. And if you do, people are like, a bunch of religious zealots, screw them.
Yeah.
But out there, they're proud of it. They're just like, no, we are Bible-believing Christians. We go to this church. You want to come with me? That's why.
The other argument would be, yeah, that's not right. They're infringing on my rights. I was like, well, they do that to me all the time, but no one's ever beaten me up.
The thing is, people out there know those constitutional rights more so than people in progressive cities. Because like we talked about in the last episode, you have been taught to give up your rights.
Yeah. No, and it's true. And we're talking about that right now.
Okay, so continue your point about how these tech companies will be predominant in these progressive cities.
Well, okay, but remember, these beta people, like the government, are not the alphas. There are the betas and the omegas, like the lowest of our society, now running things. And they're using because look, an alpha has, because I'm not an alpha, but I'm assuming alphas have very little fears. And, I
think they're just mainly, they have good risk to reward. I don't know.
But here's the thing. So I don't know. I'm not speaking from an alpha perspective, but the betas who are running everything, and they're not even betas. I think they're way lower down. Seriously, like from what I see, I think some of these people are the omegas. Like AOC, she's an omega. There is no way she is anywhere. I think she's at the bottom of our society. Think about it. Her education is nothing. So a lot of these politicians are the omegas, and they have nothing. That's why they don't have a good education. They don't have any academic achievements, any athletic achievements. They're like at the lowest levels. Just a step above. Their IQ must be exactly at 100. You know what I mean? And that's why they go into politics, because what else are they going to do? Because other people, they're like, I got better things to do. They got this.
Well, that's the thing about politics that I will still stand by. It's a job that no one should want to really do. But see,
and then you go, why did Trump do it? See, Trump, I believe, was a real alpha. And he did it because our country's to that. And I think I think conservative alphas need to take back this country. They really do. Because we got to look out for the little guys. But anyway, we're jumping. But I want people to really get that in their head, that today's 2019 government are not run by alphas. The government's not looking out for the little people. They're looking out for themselves because they're all omegas, and they just want power just for the sake of having it for selfish reasons. And because of that, they have no idea what an alpha is supposed to do. And therefore, they allow monopolies to run wild. See, now, our founding fathers would have broken up and stopped any monopoly. And if it's not a true monopoly, they would have protected that monopoly, like how they protected the black people way back in 1870 or 1880 when they had a monopoly in agriculture, mechanical engineering. And they said, look, it wasn't their fault. They were forced into it. That's different. That's not a real monopoly. So what is a monopoly? A monopoly is what we see in the tech industry, because it's heavily concentrated in one area. And that's here in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. So when they go out and take over a city like Venice, the government needed to step in and say, hey, look, you can't do this. And then, Google's response or Snapchat's response would be, all we're doing is buying buildings. What's so sinister about that? We have a right to do it. A lot of corporations own buildings. Mm-hmm. Yes, well, true, but why are you doing it? So this is what Google does and Snapchat does. Google and Snapchat, they buy up all the buildings in like whatever areas, whether it's commercial, and they double everybody's rent. Why? To get them out. The reason why they do what they do is to get everybody out, to force the city to do their bidding. See, now Mountain View doesn't need Google. They don't. Because Google's been trying to take over Mountain View for a long time.
I hear that it almost basically, like the municipality itself is run by Google, because if you buy up all the real estate there and you buy up...
They're doing it now. So,
yeah.
but Mountain View is very interesting. So Google has been like Google, and yeah, I'll tell you, I guess I could say why. Because I used to own businesses out in Mountain View, private stuff, like my Chinese restaurant. It was in Mountain View.
You had a Chinese restaurant out in Mountain View?
Yeah, so it was in Mountain View.
Real quick, how typical though, a black dude owning a Chinese restaurant in Mountain View? But that's more common than you would think.
Yeah, no, but it just fell on me because you know what it was? These dudes didn't know how to so when Google moved in, they were giving out free food. So, but the one thing that they couldn't do was have alcohol, like hard liquor.
Uh-huh.
They could do beer only once a week because because beer is regulated.
Right.
So the city allowed them once a week on Fridays to have beer on campus. And but this is why Google became Google and why they're a dangerous monopoly, because Google does what it does to create an environment where their employees are literal slaves. Like they'll work there 24/7. They never have to leave the campus. They'll live there. They can sleep there.
They can live and sleep there, yeah.
Yeah, because they got free food. They got socialization. Everything, all of your needs are taken care of.
It's like its own little city-state on the campus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And all of its surrounding buildings. They have, like we were called Building 51 because in Mountain View, they had 49 buildings.
Yeah.
And 50 was another rival bar. Like they were there for a long time. And then I was 51. And we were so badass, they called us Area 51. They didn't even call it, they called us Area 51.
That's funny.
And, no, but it was cool over there. Okay, so anyway, so the point is, Google had a hard time because they wanted to build like a quote-unquote hotel where all of, for them, where they had a nightclub, all this crazy stuff. And the city said no. The city of Mountain View told them no, it's not zoned for that. Everything needs to shut down at 11 o'clock. And there's all these rules. So, and a city has the right to do whatever it is that they want to do. And so So Mountain View was very strict about this. And what happened? Google goes, well, if we can't do it here, let's go to other places and see if we can do it over there. So they started buying up all of these properties. And let's use Venice as an example. So, you know what's funny? Before I get into Venice, Google actually bought the building where my little restaurant was at. And because I sold the business, and they tripled the rent of that restaurant.
Right.
Eventually, they're going to have to fold and close because why? Nobody could afford to pay that kind of rent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just impossible to do, especially if you don't have a nightclub in there. If you don't have a nightclub, because I had a nightclub aspect of it, and that's why I was killing it. Because, you know, when you have a nightclub, you forget the food. You're not making any money on food. You're making money on liquor. So, but anyway, it's neither here nor there. So those guys are going to be gone. And everyone's going to be gone because you can't afford the rents. But let's go to Venice. So Snapchat bought up everything. Google bought up everything. Why? Because they can force all of these small businesses out. And now Venice is a ghost town. So what happens? They have to rezone everything. And they're going to rezone everything based on what Google and Snapchat wants. So that's why it wasn't a thing like, oh, you know, because I get it. Like, because that's not.
Do you think that Kim had a point, though, when she said, I don't know if she said this in the first part that you watched, but she said something later that I'll upload on my channel where it was kind of like, well, then we need to actually put some limits on these corporations.
Yeah, of course you do. You got to break them up. That's why it's not.
So that's where I was wrong on that, because I was like, well, what's, you know, that's just what you do. If you're providing all that value to everybody, do what you want.
But it's still a progressive problem. It is a symptom of progressive ideology, because see, the progressives, they don't look after the weak. They don't. They look out for themselves and a group as a collective. You're not supposed to treat everybody as a collective. Collectivism is wrong. That's why monopolies grow, because everybody's looking at a collective thought, not as an individual thought, because the alpha's job is always to look out for everybody, including the weak. So how does this affect the weak? If you have a corporation buying up buildings to triple their rent for whatever their purposes may be, because I don't know what Google has planned for Venice. You know, maybe they want to have all these Google hotels like the way they wanted in Mountain View.
Right.
And so I knew what happened in Mountain View because I was there, because, it would have, that's what happens when something new comes in. Everybody within a 500-yard radius gets access to it, and then they get to voice their opinion, to say yay or nay, because the government is supposed to be representative of the people.
That's right.
And so the public should have a say. And I didn't care, because I thought if they were able to do that, then that means all the restrictions I had, because, oh my God, like trying to shut down and no live entertainment after 11 o'clock. Yeah, and they consider a DJ live entertainment. Oh my goodness.
That sucks.
Well, no, I got around it because, a good dude, every good hustler, every good conservative knows how to hustle around any law. So, and this is how I did it. At no live entertainment, so we had a DJ, and every time the DJ, like when the cops would come in to check to see if I had live entertainment, we'd do a light system, and then the DJ put it on, automatic, and just hit play.
So he wasn't actually conducting live music.
Yeah, he wasn't conducting. Yeah. He would just walk away from the DJ booth.
And it's just like, hey, this is just the background music in my venue.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. They were like, so your DJ's a computer? It's like, yeah, and these kids don't care? No. And nobody noticed.
That's
nobody
funny.
Noticed. It was a pre-recorded, thing he'd do on his Serato machine. And boom, everything was playing. So the cops walk in, they do a check, they call it like a 30 of 30. And they check 30 minors, because at a restaurant, you're not a nightclub. So you can have minors in your club.
Right.
Had liquor, nobody was drinking, no minors were drinking, because the cops would come in. And then when they leave, the DJ would go back, because I ain't paying no DJ to hit play. You know what I mean? Because the DJs make pretty good money.
Yeah.
And, F that if they're going to know. But anyway, so that's how we got around it. So having Google open up their own nightclub and have a hotel, we would have killed it. We would have been a massive player, in the entire state of California. Like I would have, seriously, I could have made like 20, 30 million a year.
Yeah.
Google would open that. So I was like in favor of it. But like downtown, Mountain View, they were against it because they would have killed downtown. So if you would have been in downtown, a zoned area, and that's what happened to me. Everybody was complaining that we had entertainment past 11 and it's zoned in a certain area. The entertainment district in Mountain View was not where I was at.
Oh, okay, I see.
So people were complaining and saying, hey, look, we have it this way for a reason. And, was it unfair for me? Well, yeah, of course. But I'm a hustler, so I'm going to take advantage of the laws. And because that's just how, that's how I am. So do people have a right to stop me? Yeah, of course. But that's what makes it fun, is you have to have that competitive drive and blah, 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 blah. So I'm not going to hate anybody. I'm not going to hate a community. You have to work within whatever it is, and you put up with it. So we put up with all of the police harassment and everything else because that's their job. But anyway, so Google, I don't have the power to change zoning laws. I don't, because at the local level, it should be the people, the majority of the people getting on voting on things, and that's how it should be. And you have to work within those limits. But a monopoly can bypass all of that.
Right.
Just stomp everybody because they don't care. So like in spirit, I like it, but I know what happens because they become the new kings. They become the new
and it's not really a pure form of conservatism because now it's a monarchy or an oligarchy, and the little guy's interest is not taken into account.
So, but remember, conservatism really has to have an alpha and has to have somebody looking out for the weak. And but not by stereotyping and having protected classes. Look, the weak are very simple: retarded, mentally ill, and everything else is just a competition. And so they have to allow me to work outside of that system, and they have for the most part. But anyway, so going back to Google and Venice and Snapchat,
yeah.
So
that's what Kim Iverson was talking about, was just the fact that Venice has become heavily gentrified. I argued for minimum wage laws, which is part of the thing.
I think it's part of it, but the most of it is, so you guys are both correct, but it's because of progressive ideology doesn't stop somebody like Google from doing what they've done. They could have stopped that sale. They could have stopped the sales of all. That's why it's in escrow, because somebody with an interest to that property could have stopped it, but they never did. And there is an interest in it because why are they doing it? They're doing it to change zoning requirements because now they have effectively made Venice into a ghost town. Seriously, all those buildings sit empty.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with those buildings? What are you going to do with them? Well, Google moved in their employees. Snapchat moved in their employees. They got rid of the businesses that are there, and they're slowly moving in their employees. So eventually, what's going to happen? You're going to have a whole bunch of Googlers and a whole bunch of Snapchatters, and they're going to need services. So what happens? They get rezoned to meet the needs of the new people that are there. That's not gentrification. Gentrification is more like what happened in San Francisco.
Right.
Because San Francisco doesn't have a lot of tech companies. Google cannot take over San Francisco. Why? Because San Francisco is so effed up. I mean,
it's also, here's the thing. That's why they're in Mountain View, and actually that's where the biggest ones are down there because of those zoning requirements that you're talking about. San Francisco itself is a lot of smaller tech, but it's actually finance, and it's finance, law, and
like Uber,
nightlife.
Right?
That's what it is. If people think it's like tech. No, that's south. But San Francisco,
well, there is. I forgot. Salesforce might be a good tech company in San Francisco.
Yeah, Salesforce. I mean, they got that building that's taller than a Transamerica building, but it's mostly like lawyers, like finance. It's mostly lawyers, finance, restaurants, nightlife, just higher end,
But not just that, but it's oh God, San Francisco's a mess. No, but San Francisco has a lot of EB5 money as well.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
I mean, it's to the tune of the billions. Like, there's a lot of EB5 money, like that. Billions of dollars every year will go into San Francisco, and it's just insane.
Why do you like it so much? Is it because of its proximity?
No, it's because because like this one, like Triple G, Golden Gate Global, I forgot what the name of it, but I just remember it as 3G. If you do 3G EB5, you'll see, and it's Willie Brown's original.
Of course, it's Willie Brown's.
But he has nothing but Asian attorneys and hot Asian. I mean, I don't know if they're hot, but they look like they're hot based on their pictures. You know what I mean? So, and it's basically.
Let me guess. Are most of them women?
Yeah, of course they're all women.
Of course, typical Willie Brown type.
Yeah,
stuff.
Exactly. He boned down Kamala Harris, and guess what? She raises more money than anybody in the presidential campaign. Except
That's
for
true.
Bernie.
Do you think that has to do with his ability to community organize and the money that?
No, he's just a dirty old man. He's like seriously, like he is like an alpha, but an evil alpha.
An evil alpha.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, that dude, he don't care. He just thinks.
I mean, that's what happened, right? Just a sidebar a little bit. You told me a funny story about Willie Brown going up to one of your close friends and just asking how much it would cost to take her to bed. And apparently that happens like on like a daily basis. Like women. How much does it cost like sleep with her?
Yeah. Just straight up, how much does it cost? You know, but just straight, he don't care. That's how he thinks with his penis. He really does. But at the same time, he recognizes talent though, and because he even approached me once and he goes, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" I thought that he'd come work for me and da 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 da. I was like, "Nah." I told him, I'm a Republican. It don't matter. It don't matter. Da da da.
I don't think he would have cared about.
No, he didn't. No, he just wanted a good writer and just. You know, because
good legal professional.
Goes, no, because it was true at that time. Because this is way back in the '90s, and this is what like during my heyday with being a union like person, and everybody knew who I was because I kept winning. You know, all of my cases, and anyway. So long story short, we went to some dinner. You know, because that's what you do. You go to these dinners, and it's whatever it is, the union pays. But I think it was like $200 a plate, and that was a lot of money for back then. And it was just chicken, and it wasn't like a steak. It was just a little piece of chicken and some like broccoli or some crap like that. $200, what a waste. But yeah, so like he came over, he talked to the president, and then they said, yeah, I brought this is the kid that we were telling you about, that the one that keeps winning, and he asked me point blank, hey, come join the team, da 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 da, you can work for me. And he like the same offer he probably made Kamala Harris. And and he told me, he goes, and I told him, I was like, nah, because I'm a Republican, I don't think like you guys. And it's like, I think differently. It's like, man, it has nothing to do with it. He goes, Republican is that doesn't matter. He goes, none of that stuff matters. Like, you don't know us, because he goes, you're just some kid that gave me some spiel, but ultimately he said it doesn't matter. And like, I could be successful with him and whatever. And I just said no. And that was it. So, but anyway, so yeah. So
another quick question, since we're on the subject, you and Kamala Harris are about the same age. You ever run into her?
I don't know. How old is she?
About 54.
Okay. Yeah. We're about
a little younger.
Yeah. We're the same age.
Did you work with Kamala Harris directly when she was SF's DA? No,
but wait, repeat the question.
I just wondering, did you do any work with Kamala Harris?
Oh, no. I never. No, I think I was before her.
Oh, okay.
So my success came way before her success, I believe. Because, dude, I was winning major cases. I had 2 presidential cases, and I doubt she has any. So,
But you're not even a lawyer.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing. It's like you don't need to be an attorney to do labor.
Okay.
Because, I guess the way the union set it up or something like that.
Well, you need an ombudsman. It doesn't have to be a lawyer.
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't an ombudsman either. I was just I was the chief steward. And it's just a typical thing. And yeah, it's not. Yeah, I don't even know. what to call me, because I had no legal training. I just knew the laws, and I was able to outthink everybody.
Yeah, but that's the thing I'll say about you guys. For those of you who aren't familiar a little bit with Professor Dreg, if there's one thing this guy knows how to do, it's read, which is counterintuitive to your stereotype.
Yeah, I know. No, because there's that Chris Rock joke about money and
black people can't read or something.
And so, and the thing is, I know the things I read, I could apply it to my life. Just like like that. Hold on one sec. Hey. Hold on a sec. Hold on. Because I want you to talk about that Ecclesians thingy.
Who?
You quoted something.
Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes. It's a book that was written by King Solomon in the Old Testament.
Yeah. So like when you told me that, I could apply it to my life and apply it to just other systems. Because you spoke about, and that's one of my gifts. I mean, I don't know. It's just, that's one of my survival skills, was how to apply it to myself, but also to apply it to other people, and how would that phrase, because you said something from Ecclesiastes, right?
Yeah, Ecclesiastes.
So you said something from Ecclesiastes that the gay community uses for themselves. Like literally, they twist it and use it for themselves to get sympathy for people. You know what I mean? But it's the truth. It's because with that quote you said from Ecclesiastes basically says that men.
Well, here's the thing. If you take it out of context, you can obviously twist all of the Bible's words. But in short, and I'm not quoting here, this is just what it is. It was Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 and 10, and it was two are better than one, which means if you interpret that as you're not called to live life by yourself. So to give you guys a little bit of context to listeners here, we were talking about recovery, 12 steps. We're going to go into addiction and all that in later episodes. And the idea here is that part of that pivotal process is that you don't go through life by yourself thinking you can conquer all. And the following verse is about two is better than one, and that if you have a friend, he can pick you up if you stumble. But if you live life alone, you got nobody to pick you up. And that's so integral in the recovery process.
Well, see, but in my opinion, that means you got to love your fellow man.
Yeah.
You got to love. And literally, if it's a man, not like a woman, if it's a man and you love that man, it doesn't mean you're gay. It just means you love him.
Yeah. There's a lot of men that I love.
But they twist those verses and say, oh, even in the Bible it says you got to love your fellow man and da-da-da-da-da. Because you could use that ecclesiastic thing and say, oh, see, it's just natural. Some men love each other. But
what you are – no, we have to set it right here. What you are referring to, and that twist, is the fact that love and sex are tied. They are not.
They are not.
They are not. What you just said is, oh, love, okay. That means I can have sex with anything that I love.
But those are you know, like
all it is. I mean, we can break down that thing. People are like, no, it says so here.
But it goes back to the government. Who are the government? See, but progressives, they will always try to twist things for themselves, and that's not looking out for the weakest of our society or community. See, because gay men and women, the gay community, have somehow, some way made themselves a protected class when they're not. Then they're not a protected. Why are they a protected class? There is no reason.
Because of, okay, well, in the progressive, or at least in the past few decades, it was because people didn't agree with the lifestyle that was homosexuality. I'm not here to espouse my own beliefs.
That was a lie.
No, but they all were advocating. It's like, well, we can't get married.
Yeah, what examples? And they always point to this one example about somewhere in the 60s at this hotel that a bunch of gay dudes got killed at. Who cares? That happens to everybody. But let's go back, because we talked about Ice-T. Ice-T has that song Straight Up. And I always tell everybody, if you want to learn about conservatism, listen to that song. Because even in that song, it says something about, I got freedom of speech, so I'm going to say it. She want to be les, he want to be gay. Well, I'm straight. I'm straight, so nigga, have it your way. You know what I mean? Because why? Because it's always been accepted in the streets. Always, throughout the history of time, there's always been that gay black dude or that gay Asian dude. There's always been a gay dude everywhere, you know? And then, of course, when you get out of prison, a lot of them dudes are gay. And it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean anything. Dude, like, I've known some very, very, oh, dude, this one dude, he was scary. He was like a 6'5", 6'6", huge. He must have been like 285, like the dude from the Green Mile.
Yeah.
Big ass dude. And one time he got mad, he just broke an oak table in half, just drove his fist. And I'm thinking, man, oh man, it would be hard to take him down.
Yeah, he could probably break your body in one punch.
No, but then if he wanted you, he'd have you. Yeah. If he wanted you, you know what I mean? Because he was gay as fuck. But he wasn't one of them gay guys like, oh, you know, running around with fairy dust and stuff. No, he was like masculine gay. And it was just his thing. But anyway, but the thing is, no, I've never seen it. Never seen it in the hospitals. Never seen it on the streets. Nobody, I mean, everybody gets made fun out of. Everybody. Would we make fun out of gay people? Yeah, because it's funny. Not because we're being racist or trying to malign somebody.
The term they use is homophobic, which we've already.
No, but there was a dude named Rand. Oh, I shouldn't say his name, but there was a dude like because this is way back in because this is like because you know we spoke like because I did like I only spoke to Willie Brown once, right? But it was an extensive conversation because he was trying to turn me. And anyway, so long story short, we were talking about Hayden Buchanan, right? And this is where my one of my friends from back in my child, he was the only white dude that lived in the projects, and he was a full-blown makeup, and nobody messed with him. Nobody. Why? Because his dad was an arms dealer. He was just selling like real Russian machine guns.
Right.
Like AKs and like real stuff from Russia. And just selling them on the fourth tier. So anyway, it doesn't matter. But my point is, nobody messed with him. Even if his dad wasn't selling guns, I don't think anybody would care. And because, I already said Randy, but Randy would walk around and just in full-blown makeup. Nobody knew. You know what I mean? Nobody cared. It was just part of living. It wasn't like, oh, we're being discriminated against. And then people will say, what about in the South? I doubt that too. Just people were not just, they'd harass people, but not really. It wasn't like this big thing where it was like the government was writing laws and policies against gay people. It never happened. There was no policies written by the government, like a state government or the federal government banning gay people from anything. Mm-hmm. The whole thing like, oh, in the hospitals, that's all BS. Because, I never stopped a gay person from visiting their boyfriend. Never happened. Hell, all the nurses were gay. I was the only straight male nurse.
So, but what were gay people really fighting for then? Like the fact that marriage needed to become legalized and recognized by the state? Is that what the whole...
Yeah, but that's fine. Let them. Because they wanted tax breaks. It was about taxes. It wasn't about them being discriminated against. They wanted tax breaks because at that time, gay men made more money than Asians. Gay men at one point were the highest demographic as far as salary, and they needed tax breaks. That's all it was. It was about tax breaks. So now that they're recognized as, being a married couple, it was about taxes. Because I was all for it. Like, I don't care about gay marriage. I don't care because I knew it was about taxes.
But I'm starting to see when you talk about protected classes, right, that I don't see why sexual orientation has anything to do with you as a protected class, because how does that pertain to your competence or your ability or where you fall in your society to do something? Like, let's not forget that Peter Thiel, does Peter Thiel really need tax breaks?
Well, but this is where it gets real evil. The reason why progressives,
Ellen DeGeneres, it's like,
this is why they fight for protected class status is because when everybody's protected, nobody's protected. It's a weird saying, but for us...
Well, what do you need protection from?
Well, the government. See, because that's why you need protected classes, because the government has a history of writing laws and policy that are anti-Black and anti-Chinese. Because see, people don't see that. There's two ends of the spectrum. The low end, which would be Blacks, and who used to be the Chinese, because it's like role reversal.
the equivalent of the Chinese in the
No, not even that. Like real history. In the 1800s, Chinese were at the low end of our society, and Blacks were at the high end. Because Blacks had all the education and they had all of the money. Why did they have all the money? Because they were the only farmers. They were the only ones that was our industry. It wasn't automotive. Automotive didn't come until the 1900s. So prior to that, it was nothing but. There was a thriving railroad business. There wasn't like 30 different railroad companies. There was only one railroad. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, so this whole thing, like we were this modern, no, we were a bunch of farmers. And the Chinese were at the low end. They didn't speak English. They didn't have the education like the Blacks. They just didn't. So they were at the low end. So it was easy to handle the Chinese. And it was hard to handle the Blacks. So, and that's why I'm for reparations. See, I'm for reparations because they literally stole our money through taxation. They did.
So you're a conservative that advocates for reparations, right? Yeah. What do you have to say about
for the destruction of all social services?
Yeah. Well, what do you say to conservative Blacks out there that say we don't need reparations for?
They don't know their history. Oh. It's that simple. You guys don't understand your history, because the only people who were taxed at 91% in the 50s was, I think, that were white was Joe DiMaggio and as some white entertainer. I forgot who he was, but a very popular dude. I want to say like Frank Sinatra or something like that.
See, that's the interesting thing is that I'm starting to learn that a lot of these policies and the way our American history is very, it's not all encompassing and it's not in absolutes, because on the one hand, the people who advocate for reparations, right, just in general, are the same people who say white people are responsible for all the problems in the country. But when I talk to you, you're in favor of reparations, but you also understand that it's due to anti-Black progressive policies, but it's not because all white people were.
It was through taxation, anti-Black taxation, and the labor unions. See, the government funded the labor unions to literally burn down Black businesses or businesses that employed Blacks. Like, for example, Apex Hosiery. I forgot the name of that case. But in Apex Hosiery, I don't know why I'm saying Apex Hosiery.
Is that a Black-run business?
No, it was, it was white. It's Apex Hosiery Company versus Leader. Now, in that one, just look that one up. You'll see it. It's really scary. Because this happened in the 40s, I believe. 1940. This is real recent. So in 1940, a labor union burnt down Apex Hosiery because they hired nothing but Blacks. And it wasn't because Blacks were cheap labor. It's because they understood how to do this. Because people don't understand, like, Blacks were good at textiles too. Textiles is agriculture, is part of agriculture. Right. Cotton jeans, silk, whatever. Blacks know how to do all that.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with my throat. Sorry about that. But anyway.
All good.
So if you read that case, you'll see they burnt it down, and Hosiery, Apex Hosiery lost. Because why? No diversity. There was no diversity in Apex, no Hosiery, so the judge says, it's okay. They burnt it down, blah, 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 blah. So the labor union, who was all a bunch of, and they were called the Brotherhood. Like the SEIU, all them labor unions used to all be called the Brotherhood, like white Brotherhood. That's what they were called. So they burnt down that black business, got all that money taken away from blacks because that's what they were doing in the 30s and the 20s. The labor union funded by the government through taxation of blacks.
Right.
Because that was the redistribution of wealth way back in 1913. And that was a practice. And so these labor unions were getting government funding to burn down black businesses. And there was nothing that the blacks can do. Nothing. Because the Supreme Court said it was totally legal because there was no diversity in the citizenry. So even the word diversity meant anti-black, but people don't know that. So all of these people who don't know why we need reparations and not welfare is totally...
So that's interesting because that's where I unfortunately don't know enough for it because I blanket the terms, right? Conservatives are like, oh, we don't need reparations and we don't need welfare, but it goes beyond that for you, whereas like black people need reparations.
Where are you going to get your collateral from?
Huh?
We had collateral, then they took it away. And in exchange of our collateral, they gave us welfare. So you know what I mean? And that's BS. So people don't know we need our collateral back. And $250K, that's fair. You know, when you account for inflation and everything else, $250 is not going to get you a lot. And most of the guys are going to blow it on crack and women. And but that's all right. That's okay. Because eventually they're going to have to pull themselves up with their own, you know, ability. But anyway, so going back to all of this stuff.
The government. That's what we were talking
about.
The government. Yeah.
So, and why are gays, why do they want to be a protected class? It's all part of the progressive ideology. Because I was looking into your research. 76% of all gay men attempt suicide. It was amazing to see such a high number, all of it white. 76% of the people are white committing suicide. And like blacks were at 6%, Asians, like Latins, so all the other subgroups, Latin, black, Asian, Native American, Indian, Pacific Islanders, whatever, made up 24%, and 76% of all suicides are going to be white. Why? Because there's something wrong. So they and that's why they accept being a protected class.
Right.
Community, because if 76% are trying to kill themselves, well, of course they're going to want protection because they think something's wrong with them. And they're trying to, like, dude, 76%, that was high. That was
very high.
And I was like, man, that's insane. Like that. So I get it. I understand why they believe they need protection and why progressives advocate for it, but they don't see how they're allowing monopolies to run all over them. And that's why, today's government is made up of a bunch of beta males or omega. Because look, you're an omega if you're trying to kill yourself. Omega is the last one, right? I believe is the lowest.
Well, yeah, we usually use the terms alpha and beta, but omega is just
second.
Yeah, it's just but like it's kind of like a defeatist, like you're just done.
We'll call them zeta then. That's Z. So the zetas are look. I'm thinking you got to really think about this. If 76% of all white gay people are trying to kill themselves, they are the weakest of our society, because even retarded people don't try to kill themselves. You don't see a bunch of retarded guys trying to kill themselves. So, and if these are our weakest people in our society are now our government writing policies, this is why monopolies are buying up Venice, buying up whatever other city. And that's why no one's trying to break them up. It is insane. We have an insane culture. Our government is made and being ran by the weakest of our, and not even, some are the weakest and some are just like right in the middle. They have no idea how to protect others or bring up others, as well as telling the strongest what to do or doling out, responsibilities for this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. It's a joke. because they're running around making up policies that have no bearing on anybody except for making everybody poor. They're bringing everybody down with them through their policies. Think about that. What's happening today? Our government is destroying small businesses. They're destroying the education of our children. They're destroying the healthcare system. Seriously, it's they're destroying everything. Because the thing is, the whole notion of healthcare being ran by the government is a joke, because the government isn't a medical doctor. It's an individual. Our healthcare should be ran by individuals who have this calling to open your guts up and smell that junk inside your gut. You know what I mean? It's stinky, but a certain person is built for that.
Right.
Not the government. The government's not built for that. The people running the government, they have no idea. That's why they're not medical doctors. They're too busy. Think about this. How much of our government are on psychotropic medication or antidepressants or anti-anxiety pills? How many of them?
A lot of them.
And you shouldn't be on drugs if you're going to be running shit. Running things. But it's the truth. Think about that.
Well, it's just become, but this feeds into what we've been talking about with progressive ideology, that it's part of enslavement. It's suicidal behavior. It's normalized. It's not the fact that it's happening. It's the fact that it's become normalized, and that is the new norm, and it wasn't the case before.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And it all started officially started in 1913 under Woodrow Wilson. He had a plan with Roosevelt, and they were all racist, trying to help, the poor white people, and they just didn't know how to do it. Because, there is no, if you're a real alpha, you're not going to have any room for racism, because alphas know, hey, look, they're all a part of the community, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, it don't matter. See, and that's why I liked that song Straight Up, N-word, because why? It embodies what an alpha's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. If you're the leader, you're supposed to look, they're not hurting you. They're not, unless they're not washing their hands, but you just tell them to wash their hands, and that's that. You know what I mean? So being gay is not going to hurt you. Being, a criminal is not going to hurt you unless they go out and kill you. But you know what I mean? If you're going to break some rules, that's not going to hurt you. If you're not going to go to school, it's not going to hurt you. There's a lot of things you can do that are not, quote unquote, what the norm does. And in progressive ideology, there's no room for that. Everybody must conform and think the same way, because it's the only way it works. Communism only works if everybody is of the same mind, same body. That's it. There's no space for communism for anything different. That's why in China, the official religion is being an atheist. Same thing in the old, Soviet Union. There was no God in the USSR. It will not work. Religion has to be gone. Everybody just must believe in the government, and the government's looking out for them. That's it. That's how it was in Russia. That's how it is today in China. Who was that Dalai Lama dude they were trying to kill in Tibet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they squashed religion. They just do. And it's kind of like Muslims do the same thing. Muslims destroy those old Buddhist temples that were thousands of years old. They destroyed those big giant statues, just blew them up. And I'm not a Buddhist and nothing like that, but man, that made me mad. I'm thinking, dude, you don't destroy history like that. Those statues were thousands of years old, and they just blew it up. But
that's what happened. In recent events with ISIS, they went through places like Syria and Beirut and all that, and took and destroyed. And the funny thing is, some of these Middle Eastern countries, a lot of people don't really talk about this, but it's true. They used to be actually Christian countries up until a few decades ago.
Yeah,
they went in.
Yeah, they killed them all. And but this is recent. This was because I remember Michelle Obama saying, save our girls. And but there were Christians. There were Christians. There were Christians that were now slaves.
Yeah.
And if they wouldn't convert, they'd kill them. And I bet you they kept the pretty ones as slaves. But anyway.
But see, here's the interesting thing that you'll get from how come our government and this is the last thing I'll say when we wrap this up. But we'll finish your thought actually before I jump into this, because this is going to
no, yeah, because I know it's one. So
well, no. I mean, if you have something to add, I just want to tie. Like, what do you have to say before I tie this together? Because this is actually going to.
Conclusion is this. My conclusion is this. Look, in the old days, our government used to be the alphas, and today, our government is comprised of a whole bunch of people that are the lowest in our society, and they're bringing everybody down to their low levels because they made it a career. It's not supposed to be a career. It's supposed to, like the alpha, they have their own thing going. So they just go check in, make sure this and that, we make contracts. But it's just, seriously, like, we have contracts. If the contracts go awry, instead of killing each other, you go take it to the judge, and the judge says, okay, this is fair, this is not fair, and boom, you walk away. But today,
make a career out of it. We pay you millions of dollars and all of that.
It's all BS, and it's bringing everybody down. That's what their job is, to keep everybody
It's funny because we think of kings and we think of true leaders as people that, obviously are going to make sure they are strong and dependable. But the concept of a leader, right, of somebody who's in office, almost doesn't have that shared mindset of wanting to look out for the little guy. And it's interesting because our government, as far as the constitutional values are concerned, is tied into Christian values, right? Like libertarian-esque influenced values that actually came straight out of the Gospels. Because I mean, and I don't want to make this too religious, but for people who are listening, it is what it is, and that's how our laws have been written, is as a reflection of those Christian values. And Jesus was a leader, was a king, son of God, who came to serve, and he came down to look out for the little guy. He wasn't here telling so-called people that this is how they should live or this is how you should do things, but he
was an alpha. But it's true.
But what I'm trying to say is that's kind of what ties it together, is that the one thing that we look to for any kind of striving for betterness in ourselves, right, is that, because you talked about the governments in the USSR and in China, it's because they eliminated God out of the equation. Therefore, all of those freedoms and rights are not granted to you because you are human. It's a group of people who tell you how to think and how to behave. So I hope people actually think about this for a little bit. I mean, by no means do I have it all together, but it's to get you thinking, like, think about it for a second, right? I mean, are you really a protected class? Are you really somebody who is really a victim? Or do we just not know the history of our government and what our government is intended to do? And I missed the mark on this a couple of times as well, since I'm still learning.
Well, like I said before, there is no such thing as a protected class. There's only people who need to be protected, and those are the mentally retarded and the mentally ill. Everybody else, they're fine. But again, we have to remember that institutional racism is real, but it only applies to two groups of people: African Americans and Chinese people. That's it. Nobody else, because the laws were intended to destroy them. And there's no other, no other laws were ever written against Japanese people. There was a declaration of war, and they mistreated our own citizens, but it happened to the Germans, it happened to the Italians. They too were put in concentration camps. Yeah, and that was a mistake. So you know what I mean? So
Japanese were paid reparations. Just so you know.
Yeah, they were paid reparations. But the thing is, the whole notion of protected classes, that's all BS. Everybody knows who should be protected, and it should be up to the local communities to protect those people, not the federal government. That's why I'm for reparations and the destruction of all federal funds going into welfare or Medicaid or any of that. What was that St. Jude Hospital? St. Jude Hospital is, they pretty much get all their money from charity, and they don't charge those kids for medical treatment. None of those medical treatments that those children receive come from the government. It's all, privately funded. And that's how it should be, and if they're weak, like a kid with cancer at 6 years old, come on, they can't afford cancer treatment. It should be free. And it is free. That's how it should be done. I don't know if St. Jude's probably, it says saint, so I'm assuming it's some kind of Christian thing. And that's how it should be done. You know, through your charities and donations, the churches should be doing stuff like that. That's why they don't pay any taxes.
Right.
You know, they make billions of dollars in collect. I don't know what they call it, but
tithes, offerings.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and tithing. Yeah. And that money should be going into building up those orphanages and hospitals. But anyway, today, the government, like you guys are correct, both you and Kim are correct, the government are the people. But it should be the alphas and not what we see today. Because today's government is comprised of a bunch of zetas or megas, but they're not even betas. They're below that. They're way below.
Oh, man.
But it's the truth. And that's why our policies are out to destroy anybody who's successful, except for those who are monopolies. And then they just run roughshod all over them. And that's why monopolies happen, because monopolies are just a bunch of betas who aren't alphas, because alphas have to look out for the weak. But, you know, they're very strong people like Google, and they run roughshod all over the progressives because they're so low. Just like the Muslims, they run roughshod because, you know, think about this. Muslims are quote unquote a protected class, but they hate gays, they hate blacks, they hate Asians, they hate everybody because the Muslims were the original Aryans. So they still believe in that stuff. They were the only people not to be punished from World War II. You know, they weren't punished. All those leaders, they're still alive, teaching anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish stuff, anti-black stuff. And I know people, but aren't Muslims, a lot of Muslims black? Yeah, it was a plan. They went into the prisons, converted a lot of prisoners in the 60s and converted them to Islam.
Right.
And to start an army. Why? Because they assumed Darwin was correct, and we talked about that earlier this hour, that how, you know, a lot of these retards were like big ass, you know, dudes that were strong to take a beating. Yeah. That's what they felt about blacks in prison. They're just slow, and we can turn them into soldiers.
That's crazy,
you know,
but it makes sense. It makes sense what you're talking about. So, yeah.
But remember, Muhammad Ali was an advocate of not interracial dating. Muhammad Ali used to, but he was in public, you know, saying, hey, look, no one can understand me better than an African-American woman. Not a Chinese, because the Chinese man, they go with the Chinese woman, the white woman. And
you know what? Kim was right about that. Something that I also agree with. Like, people self-segregate. They just do. Based on.
But that's natural. But Muhammad Ali also said a black woman from Africa is not going to understand me from, you know, wherever city he was from, you know, from America, because they got different food, different music. But the American black woman, she understands my music, understands my food. But people do that naturally. And that's okay. Segregation is not bad. It's only bad when you mandate it. Because, you know, like for me, I'm mixed. So therefore, I would not exist unless some horny white dude banged a black woman. You know what I mean? Seriously, that's why I exist today.
Yeah.
and so, am I against it? Hell no, I'm not against it, because nothing wrong with it.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. Only if it's mandated by law by a group of people who don't collectively have your best interests. So that's what I'll say about that.
And this is the thing. It's okay. It's okay to self-segregate because, like, you know, I actually have a lot of history in Westminster, whatever. And no, but you can go there, start your own little business, and no one's gonna mess with you. You can compete just like anybody else. Just like when I owned that Chinese restaurant, nobody cared. It was like a whole Asian thing. I still compete in there, and I beat them. It's okay. But no one was trying to kill me. Nobody was trying to out-hustle me. I mean, they always try to out-hustle me, but you know what I mean? But at least they're not using violence against me. You know, nothing. You know, I brought in Russian people. Like, everybody respects one another because it's just how it works. That's how, you know, but you still self-segregate. I had Russian night. I had all these different nights. Why? Because like on Thursday, I did salsa. Because on Thursday nights, there was, I didn't want to do it on Friday. It was just for money. And that's okay. And nothing wrong with it. But if they were ever, because like, oh God, with the Russian night, we have a problem with the Armenians. Because the Armenians are like the N-words of like in the Russian area, like the Eastern Europe. But it's true. Like people don't like Armenians for whatever reasons. And we would stop that. So if there was some beef going on, say, hey, look, man, all you guys speak the same language, just ignore it. You know what I mean? But the government doesn't need to step in. It's just a waste of time, a waste of energy, and just an excuse to take your money. And so I'm hoping people really do listen to what we said today and understand who are these people, because they're not looking out for you. They're not. In the old days when the country first started, yeah, you can say it, but you're not going to say it now. Because every policy, every law has been written to keep people down and keep them as a protected class. From the 1964 Civil Rights Act to anything today, it was all written to keep you down. Because affirmative action came about, the bad things from 1964. But even that was bastardized. Right. Everything's been bastardized by the progressives. So I don't care what anybody says. History is too strong and too factual to say anything different, that progressives are a bunch of racists and a bunch of sick people twisted in their head trying to destroy everybody, because misery loves company. It just does. I don't know why. But
well said. That's why we're not progressives, and that's why we don't ever proclaim to be. So thank you guys for listening to the American Made and Paid Show. Again, my name is Zach Heng. I got my co-host, Professor Dreg. Be sure to check out some earlier episodes on our takes on progressivism and the political spectrum, just so you garner a better understanding as to where we stand, and we will see you all in the next video. Take care.